Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, thank you for joining this lecture. I'm very glad to be part of these sessions that you will have related to mobility management. And yes, as I said, okay, we are starting on time. That is good. We're in Germany, so let's get used to it. And so the topic that I would like to talk about today is business development and bid management. We are also touching upon a bit of procurement, technical management, which is something which is more part of project related. We will try to cover both parts, okay, here. And maybe I will do a very short introduction of the agenda. In terms of the agenda, as I said, we will touch upon a bit of what is DB, information about the DNC, sales and business development, bid management, and also we will discuss a bit of accountants to police border, which is a project we are working right now, and we will focus on the technical procurement management. Short introduction about myself. My name is Victor Sarabia. I'm a mechanical engineer. I'm from Peru. I'm working by the BNC since 2021. I have experience related to the bid management and also project phase. So I was more involved in different projects around the world during the bidding process. And also in terms of my project experience, I mostly focused on the government police border project. I had the chance also to participate in the bid phase, the bidding phase of the project work, and focus on the technical procurement management and also design technical industry. By the way, I also did an MBA here. I forgot to mention that. I was a student as well as you. I was on the other side. Yeah. And yeah, I'm glad to be there. So let's start with the topic. So let's talk about a bit DB&C. So DB&C is one of the most important players around the world in terms of infrastructure and mobility projects. So it's not only providing engineering solutions, but also operation. This is one of the most advantages that we have when we are also competing with other companies in order to win projects. So some remark here in terms of how DB&C is involved in different kind of projects, passenger transport, infrastructure, and also freight transport and logistics. So as I said, I am part of DB&C. DB&C is part of the DB, the Deutsche Bahn DB&C group, and I'm part of the DB Engineering and Consulting, which are responsible for providing engineering solutions, also involved in the bidding phase for the preparation of different offers around the world, right? And the differentiating here from DBIO, which DBIO or international operation are more focused on the operation itself, managing operations, providing solutions to the different clients. So I already mentioned, right? DB&C would like to bring their expertise to provide solutions to clients worldwide, not only Germany, but also in different parts of the world. Shortly about DB&C history, right? At the very beginning, DB&C was actually split into two different railway companies, right? And then they mixed it. So we have like the separation is part of Germany, was part of Germany, and then they mix it together. So they become DB Consulting, and then we were evolving till right now, which we are now DB Engineering and Consulting. We have different expertise here that we can offer to the client. So design, one of the points was construction supervision. One remark here is that we are not doing construction. We are doing construction supervision only. That is one important remark. Project management as well, so environmental and your services, and also validation and assessment. So DBNC, if we are talking about the market, we have national market, we are talking about Germany, or international market, which are involved for international clients. So I already mentioned that we skip this slide here. And so that was already mentioned, DB Eco Group, right? So mostly related to engineering and consulting and international operation, the more focus here. And also we have a branch in North America, so we have also DB Eco. Different solutions that are offered by DBNC, right? We are providing solutions from the idea till the implementation of the service, right? Starting from the feasibility studies, going to the operation and maintenance, right? And with a strong focus on, for example, one of the main products we have are construction supervision, for example, and also design, which is the project we will talk about at the very end of this presentation. So now, after doing the introduction about the DBNC, so I would like to give you a bit more inputs regarding one of the first stages in this process. So sales and business development, I would say at the very beginning of the process. So talking about you would like to be involved in one project, right? First of all, you need to identify opportunities. So we call them opportunities, right? And we need to identify suitable opportunities. We need to make a market analysis, and we need to identify which of them are feasible and also are aligned with the products. If that don't happen, we are not going to be involved. So this is an important kind of, I would say, milestone that need to be fulfilled in order to move forward on being involved in the project. Okay. After saying that, I will try to go into details here. So, as I already mentioned, right, we need to do this market study, right? We need to identify suitable opportunities. We need to also do some market intelligence. So, sometimes, many times, I would say, we like to be involved in projects, but we don't have the local knowledge. So, without the local knowledge, you cannot be involved in a project international. You need to have local knowledge. You need to get in touch with local subcontractors, which are also key part of this of any project. Even though DBNC has a very broad range of products, right? It wouldn't be feasible, economically feasible, to bring those solutions to the client from German products. It would be too expensive. We need to be competitive. It's not just be technical, but also be financially competitive. That is also important. So that's why we develop this funnel that we call it like this. So in which we follow a certain process, right? We do the market analysis, right? And we also do the scouting. Scouting means basically to identify suitable, feasible, and suitable opportunities that we consider are, for example, aligning with our product portfolio, right? And also aligned with the region objectives. So we call regions, for example, we call Latin region, Latin American region, we call Europe region, and Near Middle East region as well. So we call it regions, but we are talking about a group of countries, so I will say like that. So we move from the scouting process, right? We have this quality gate, we need to provide certain inputs that need to be assessed by the manager and need to be approved. If we If we fulfill the quality gate number 1, we move to prospective, in which we are going more into detail, right? We are checking into how close we are to the client, right? Is this product matching our product portfolio or not? That's some of the questions that need to be answered during this before passing this second quality gate. In the third quality gate, we are moving more into details, right? We are thinking already about collecting more input from the client, right, in this process. So we already are involved, we are close to our client, we got some meetings already to the client, we got certain inputs in terms of the tender documents, right? Tender documents, we call the final document that will be provided by the client in order to participate in a different and specific project, right? All the technical specifications should be included there. So at this point of time, the client will already provide us with certain information that will give us an idea of the project from the technical perspective and also financial perspective. So that information needs to be handed over to the bid management team or the bid manager, right? If we pass this quality gate number 3, then we are able to prepare an offer. We were able to prepare an offer, to assign some resources to be involved in the preparation of the offer. I know it's very complex. It involves a lot of effort, I would say. We need to involve different experts. That's why we have this quality gate, which enable us to try to choose the right one, the right project that we think we are able to win. That is what we are doing now. So now we pass the quality gate and then we move to the bid management phase. And luckily, we might be able to go to negotiate with a client if we are that preferable. Okay, this is here is a bit more details in terms of the business developer approach, right? So basically here we are differentiating different kind of projects, but we would like to touch upon. For example, we have certain numbers defined in terms of which project I call large projects, right? Around 5 millions, more than 5 millions would be considered like a large projects, right? We have also vague projects, focused ones, and mid-term programs. So it's important, well, what I mentioned here is more or less a bit what I already said, so I will move to the next point. Okay, so partner analysis. So what is the partner analysis means? Partner analysis means basically we need to know the market. We need to know the market, we need to know the players. We need a project and we need to fulfill certain requirements from the client, right? And we need to choose the right. It depends of the structure of the could be a joint venture, right? It could be partners, or maybe we are going to be in the lead and we will have some subcontractors. So in any case, we need to identify the right players in order to fulfill client requirements. For example, we are very strong on the railroad, and the client and the project involves also designing some roads, like we could be local roads, access roads, maintenance roads. So we need to fulfill that requirement as well. But we don't have as a German company, we don't have the local knowledge. So then we need to look at them, and we need to choose the right one. We need to choose the one who already probably in the best case they have really experience with a client, they work together. Then there are some, and also they should be competitive, right? Technically and also financially competitive. That is somehow more of the factor we are considering for a partner analysis here. And then, so as I said, we need to make an assessment, identify the weaknesses, and strengths as well, right? One example here, right? We have DB and C, we have ICON, right? And we would like to work as a partnership, right? Then we need to identify what are our strengths, what are weaknesses, and the same for requirement. And then we need to analyze both as a whole, and then we need to identify if we still have some weaknesses, and we need to look for subcontractors in order to fulfill the requirements and be strong. This is more or less what we already discussed, right? So here a bit more of, as a result kind of market analysis and partner analysis as well. So who is strong in which part of the railway expertise, right? So high speed rail, for example, we can see Sistra is a very well located. The metro system also ICON is strong as well. And LRT transport also we have here ICON as a lead. Okay. So a bit more information. So it's important to also identify financial institutions. It's one of the, it's part also of the quality gates requirements. We need to identify, okay, the client wants to implement the project, but who is funding it? Who is behind? Who is providing the fundings in order to make this project happen, in order to make it real? So we need to know that, we need to get the information. If it's not clear, also probably we won't be involved. So again, here we are highlighting, right, our expertise and more involvement in the different projects and also in the project life cycle, right? From the very beginning, from the planning phase, right, the feasibility study, till the operation and maintenance. Okay, here you can see some of the main players that are involved in the project, right? Institutional investor here, private, international financial institutions as well. So all these players need to be identified also by the business developer, and also in order to fulfill the quality gates requirements to start working on the preparation. Okay, now we move into the bid management phase or bidding phase, right? Here we already have the approval from the top manager. We already passed the different quality gates, right? And we got the approval in order to work on preparing the offer. For this, we might need to assign some specific actors, I would say. We have a project sponsor, which is going to be the, we can call like the regional manager, right? With the business developer lead from the specific region, and then we will have the bid manager, who is the one responsible for the whole preparation, for the whole process of preparing this offer. We need to allocate also, he's looking at the offer from the administrative perspective, but we might need to have someone else who is going to be involved more in the technical part, which is called the technical bid management. We will talk about this shortly. So here, a bit of the process we are following in order to, during the bid preparation process, right? First of all, we need to read that in the documents. This is key. Unfortunately, it could happen that not all the stakeholders involved in the process are aware of the content of the tender documents, so, which is RFP also is called, which include also different technical specifications and administrative requirements as well, right, from the client side. We need to prepare a document which is called the management summary. Management summary is a very important document in which we are summarizing the project in order to be able to present to the top manager and get the approval for moving forward on that bid preparation. Organizational chart means basically we need what I already mentioned, right? We need to identify the different players, bid manager, technical bid manager, risk manager also we can include them. We need to identify the risk involved in the project, that's also important. And also the subject matter experts. So we are involving subject matter experts, we are involving parties related to the legal part, compliance part, also and the commercial. Obviously, we need to involve also HR. HR will support us in order to get the different expertise that we need for implementing the project during the project execution. We need to also prepare a bid schedule, right, in order to be able to deliver the offer on time. We have a process which is called go-no-go meeting. This is the very beginning. So this is I would say, one of the first steps in order to start working on the offer. Without a go-no-go, without this acceptance, you cannot move forward, you cannot proceed on working on the project. And also you might need to get a budget, big budget, which have to be defined also by a commercial lead in order to estimate the resources that you can involve during the bid preparation. During the bid preparation, you have to fulfill the different requirements, right, from the administrative part and from the technical part. For the administrative part, you might need to submit different documentation, right, regarding, for example, the experts. So you may need to get in touch with HR, you need to fulfill some legal requirements, compliance requirements, you need to demonstrate that you are strong in developing projects similar to the one the client is bidding right now. And from the technical perspective, most of you might need to prepare a technical offer. For preparing this technical offer, you need to involve also different partners, either depending on the kind of project. We are talking about design project, we are talking about construction supervision project, we are talking about maintenance project or operation. So according to these guidelines, you might need to define the expertise that you may need in order to deliver the project or preparing the offer in this case. Key competing would be that after getting the acceptance for the government offer, you might organize key competing in order to present the project to all the different stakeholders that will be involved in the bid preparation. You might get the confirmation with the bid team, and also you will estimate the budget as I already mentioned. Okay, so one point here, the last one, so stakeholder strategy. So you need to define the stakeholder strategy, or the bid manager need to define the partnering strategy together with the commercial manager. They have to work together. Commercial manager already have some local knowledge. They already go in touch with different for important players from that specific country. And then they already define potential partners, and we could work as I already said, as a joint venture, right? We have to define who is going to be the leader, and in all we are working as we are working alone, right? And we are submitting, I would say, as a main player, but we have some subcontractors. Okay, so of course I already mentioned the partner due diligence is more or less to define, right, the cooperation that we already have with this partner or with this subcontractor, right? We have to prepare some MOU as well, right? And to reach some teaming agreements. So we need to also, after reading the tender documents, we need to define, right, the award criteria. What will be the award criteria? How offer will be assessed by the client? So it's going to be, for example, 30% technical part, 70% financial part. So It's something that needs to be defined, and we need to know also how it will be calculated, right? Maybe also some clients would ask you to provide company experience, so which means you need to prepare you need to demonstrate to the client that you already have experience in that specific kind of project, right? With certain requirements, right? Like a contract value, right? Duration you're involved in the project, so on and so forth. Resource management, as I said, we need to look for resources in order to deliver the project. So some cases the client will tell you, okay, we already defined the list of key experts. So, which means the client will do an assessment internally, right, together with the experts, and they say, for this project, I might need at least to include this expert, 20 experts, 10 experts, 15 experts. They will group manager, design manager, except for the manager, so railway expert, block expert, so on. The client will make a list, and they will say, that is a minimum list of key experts that I need in order to that you might need in order to deliver this project, and the client, most of the cases, will provide some scoring criteria, right? And they will assess the CVs from those experts. That's why we need to look always for the more competitive ones in order to be able to get as much points as possible. We need to define the pricing strategy and selling rates. So here we need to work closely with the commercial manager. Commercial manager also need to think about target price. Target price needs to be defined by the commercial manager based on previous projects already developed in a specific region or specific country, right? But that's in addition to that, we have to do a bottom-up calculation. Right? We will do during the preparation of the offer, we will make an estimation of the resources that we will need for this project, and then we will make a calculation. And at the end, we will reach something in the middle, right? Target price here, maybe bottom-up calculation here, and we need to find something in the middle, and that will be our final price for this offer. Of course, you need to keep in mind for estimating for the bid costing, you need to also keep in mind the risk involved also and the opportunities. For this, you might do a workshop. You might involve different parties and identify the different risks related to this specific project. Peer review basically means during the offer preparation, right? We are preparing the offer for the technical part and also as a whole, the bid as a part of the bid management phase. So, for example, technical offer is prepared by the technical bid manager, but we always will have this process in which we will include some reviews. We need to assign a peer reviewer with, in the best case, should be someone with a high level of expertise, with high knowledge of different projects, and they could also review the documentation and provide feedback to the technical manager and identify which points could be improved. We have the sprint review when the technical offer is about 40%, 50%, and then we have also the red review, which is going to be 80-90% of the project, and gold review, which is going to be the final one, more related to the documentation. So, peer review and red review more technical ones, and gold review more documentation. And then we have the final bid meeting. Here we will involve top managers of the company, and then we'll provide feedback to the final offer, and then we'll, from the technical, from the financial, and from the legal perspective, and then we'll define if we submit the offer or not. It could happen that if we are not fulfilling, we will not submit the offer. So, this is more or less the process when we are doing an offer. I will move to the next point. So, As I already said, you have to involve different parties. Communication is key. So bid manager should be able to engage different parties, right? In order to meet, for example, the bid schedule, in order to submit the offer according to the submission deadline provided. Sometimes we might get extension of the submission deadline, sometimes not. Something that bid manager have to deal with. Here is something that we already discussed, right? A bit. We have this market request. We have this the very beginning of the stage, the business development phase, right? Then we have something that we mentioned, the kickoff meeting, right? We are moving to a big preparation and review, and we are doing the submission, right? I will move to the submission stage. I think we already discussed it, the previous one. So, what happened after submission of the offer, right? After we submitted the offer, the client will review the offer, and we will have a phase which is request for clarification, right? We will have some meetings with the client in which the client would like to clarify why we offer or not, and then we might move to the negotiation phase with the client in which the client is sure that we are covering the scope, and then they are looking more at the financial part, and we will try to reach some agreements with the client, and keeping in mind also the terms and conditions included in the contract. So I also wanted to include a project example here, right? More or less to give you a better understanding of the different stages, right, during the bid preparation. So, for example, is as follows. So, let's consider this scenario, right, in which DB was shortlisted, right? It happened that we are talking about a two-stage tender process. It happens that the client would ask for the different companies to provide certain information, right, before being shortlisted. Maybe the client would say, okay, I would like to tender this project, but I would like to be sure that you are the right company and you are able to deliver this project. So they might do this two-step process. They could ask, for example, provide project experience, right, in which you need to fulfill specific requirements, right, and you need to provide some, show the client that you are able to deliver the project, and you could be shortlisted or not. Let's consider DB&C has been shortlisted, right, for participating in a specific project, right, and the project is called Supervision and Management of the contract for design, supply, installation, and maintenance of modernization of signaling system and track work on quiet corridor. So for this, a management summary was prepared by the bid manager, right, and trying to include, right, what's the project, right, tempo reference, also comparators, planning strategy, so on. So I will show you an example of this management summary. That's an example of management summary that you can see here. So let's focus on first project information, right? We have different points here: project information, contractual or financial inputs, project background, time frame, objectives of the service, right, and some specific considerations. Project information, we need to collect as much input from where the project is going to take place, right? who is going to be a client is key. It could happen that we have a direct client and final client. So in this case, we identify a client as a national player. We move to the project contract volume, right? Financial information, right? For example, contract volume, what's the budget, what is the type of contract we are talking. The budget is the budget, internal budget that we have in order to prepare the offer. Who are the financial entity? So it's important to identify financial entity. Without financial entity, the project cannot be implemented. Subcontractors, subconsultants, in case they're needed. Project background, right? So basically here we are providing info about the project, right? More technical content of the project. We are talking about a double track 160 kilometers, right? Which was installed in 1990, right? By Alstom. And so we are moving also on the time frame of the project. That we need to know when the tender documents were released, what is the submission deadline, right? When we will have, we will be able to submit our clarification requests. So during the bidding, the offer preparation, it happens many times. It's always that not everything is clear in the tender document. Then you need to go through the document and you need to identify what is unclear there and submit questions to the client. If the client is not able to answer the question within the deadline, most probably the client will provide extension or submission. It will happen. When will be the negotiation? With the negotiation will take place, right? And the project duration also is it's also important, and commencement of the services. So in this project we have, you can see in the bottom left, so you will see who are involved in the project and what is our position, right, as a consultant. So we are as a consultant, I want to work together with a contractor and also with the client, right? And also with technical auditor who is going to check, right, the performance of that of some of the parts. So, as a part of the management summary, we also prepare. We have to identify what are the other companies who were already shortlisted. Who are our competitors? We need to identify competitors, and we need to identify also the weaknesses and the strengths. So, for example, in this example, right, competitor number one, we have company A1A, right? And this company is particularly was involved also in the preparation of the bidding documents. So, tender documents were shared by the client with us, but some of the companies were involved also in this preparation. So, we also, it's important to know if there are an issue on that topic, it should be clarified by the client, right? So we have other companies, right, who are working as a joint ventures, and other we are working alone and only with subcontractors. That information is also important. We have in this project, for example, a limitation of 25% of the total contract amount in terms of a sub-consulting. So that means you cannot involve subcontractors more than 25% of the value of your final offer. So we have also the evaluation criteria well identified here, in which we are including 4 points, right? First one, which is related to subconsultant experience, which means we have to demonstrate to the client that we work already in projects, in similar projects, and maybe they will ask for fulfilling specific requirements, like the contract value, for example, duration of your involvement in the project, and so on and so forth. Methodology, right, which means basically the technical proposal, the technical document that which reflect, right, our capabilities will show the client that we are aligned with the technical requirements and we are able to deliver the project from the technical perspective. Key experts, in this case, the client wanted or is asking for involving at least 18 key experts, right? It doesn't mean that you have to only consider the key experts. You will have this concept of key experts and not key experts, and even additional experts. So it is more based on the bidder experience, company experience. The client might not have experience and they cannot tell you who exactly will be involved in this project. So we as a company with experience in previous projects worldwide, we have to recommend the client as per our assessment what expertise is needed, or which experts are needed in order to deliver a successful project. In this case, it's a very particular project because the client is also asking in the point number 4, right, that some of the key experts need to be involved also in national projects. That means you need to involve local. You need to involve local experts, and that is very tough sometimes to get resources with experience. In regular projects, sometimes not easy task. It could be very, very complicated. So the client is also providing here, right, the evaluation criteria. You can see at the top, right, which means the financial score and also the technical part, right, financial proposal. For the financial proposal, is provided 30%, and for the technical part, 70%. And the calculation is as mentioned. There are usually the usual information that's provided by the client. So here also we are highlighting the areas of expertise that will be involved for delivering this project. So it's a multidisciplinary engineering services, right, including project management, signaling, track, civil work, power supply, and so on, right? And the list of key experts required by the client is here on the left side. What is the scope of work? That is also very important, and that needs to be reflected also in the technical offer, right? In this case, the client is asking for delivering a supervision, right? In this case, supervision of the project could be supervision of design, right? Also, it's asking for supervision of elaboration, implementation of environmental and social management plan, and it's asking for preparing and developing a risk-based project management approach. I'm not gonna go into details. I will move next one. Competitors assessment. I think we already discussed this point. I will also move forward. Yes, for example, here we can give a bit more details, right? What will be our partnering strategy? We mentioned that at the very beginning of this presentation, right? In this case, we are going as a prime, and we are working with a nominated subcontractor. This subcontractor has been involved in many projects. They work together with the client. They were engaged in different disciplines, right? Experience in railway, experience in design. They have a very strong, very broad list of experts, right? Structural engineering, steel structures, so on and so forth, project management as well. So that's why we need to hear more, describe why we are choosing this company as a subcontractor or as a partner. Okay, here I try to, I want to do kind of exercise, but I don't think we will be able to do that in this session, but I will give part of the presentation maybe to you, right, at the beginning. So you can go through, you can try to answer the following question, right? That I mentioned here, right? For example, we can answer based on the information provided as management summary, and also if publicly available information, we can answer some questions that could be asked by the top managers, right? They will, during the presentation of the offer, they can ask you some questions, and you have to answer, and you have to provide clear information that why we are, for example, one question would be if the project scope or scope of work is matching our product portfolio, right? We can ask this question. We don't know if we have the required references, right? Do we expect to have the required reference and key expert? References means basically project experience, right? We have a very long list of different projects in which we were involved. We call them references, right? And this question is more related to that point. Do we have capacity and time for big preparation? Maybe the big team or the big department is already involved in other projects, right? Even some resources for the big team could be involved in projects. Maybe they are already working in projects, and then they might not have capacity, right? Or maybe they are working already in one very important offer, and they might not have capacity for preparing the offer, right? Then there will be some discussions, right, between the regular lead with the lead of the big department and try to find out how they can sort it out, how they can prepare the offer. They might need maybe support from the department, so somehow it will also could happen. And also important if we have the time for preparing the offer. This time frame for preparing the offer could change drastically from one region to another, right? Usually when we're involved in projects in Latam, for example, usually the deadline for preparing the offer was 2 weeks, maximum maybe 3 weeks, right? So very complicated to prepare. When we are talking about European projects and new Middle East projects, for example, the timeline would be longer, like would be 1 month, 1.5 months. So it's something that we have to deal with, right? And we have to be prepared in order to meet the submission deadline of this specific bidding process. So another question, the interesting one is, do we believe that we have realistic chances to win, right? Do we think that we will win this project or not? We need to keep in mind different points, right? Maybe we already have some engagement with a client. We work with a client on our projects, right? And maybe they really appreciate our work, right? We deliver on time, we deliver with high quality, and then we think that also this project would match our product portfolio, right? And it's also aligned maybe with our objectives, right? Other commercial objectives. And also we are competitive price-wise in order to be involved in this project. So that's some sort of the answers that need to be considered when we are discussing, right? If we have chances to win, actually. So there will be also an important point to be discussed is the risk of potential conflict of interest, right? Maybe we are already involved in this project, maybe we are delivering part of the project, maybe we support the project in the preparation of the tender documents, right? So we need to be sure that we compliance, we have compliance, we are complying with the requirements, we need to avoid this conflict of interest as well. Right? That's another point that also have to be considered here. I will move forward. Okay, so next point, So next topic, which is also very important, is the risk management approach. So, risk management approach, as a part of the bidding process, right, or offer preparation process, right, we need to consider also the risk. We need to identify. First of all, we need to involve different parties, right, in order to provide inputs for the risk workshop. Because all of the points that will be included in this workshop should be also estimated, right? We need to identify cost factors here. We need to identify cost factors in order to add certain percentage to our offer, right? Assign it to the risk. So there is a process, right? Maybe you might be already familiar with it, right? In order to manage the risk, right? We need to identify the risk. You need to assess the risk, right? You need to define some measures, right? And you need to monitor the risk as well. So more or less, this is the risk management cycle that we are following as a part of our approach. And we have different types of risk. For the technical one, right? For the technical one, there is an example here. There could be many examples, right? I don't know the very details, right? But could happen, for example, another example of technical risk would be usually a client. They already do, I would say, like conceptual design. If we are talking about design project, they would have already developed a conceptual design, right? And they are asking us to do it preliminary design, right? Then we need to develop the preliminary design, and we need to align with the special plan or preliminary the conceptual design. We need to align with the conceptual design, consider input from the conceptual design to be included in more preliminary design. And there is the risk also that maybe what was included in this preliminary design is not following local standards or local regulations. It happened also in some of the projects. You are in this stage, right? You are designing, you have conceptual design, and I want to design here, to do that conceptual design, providing all the information to you, okay? That's the inputs, and some of the inputs maybe are not following the local regulation. So there should be a reason behind what they did, right? You need to find out what is the reason, right, in order to move forward on the design. So that could be one risk from a technical perspective, right? Economic risk, right? As mentioned here, for example, delayed payments, right? Delayed payments could happen, right? Maybe because the client doesn't have enough funding at the moment for delivering the project, right? That could also create some delays in the payments. Maybe also we could have delays in the payments if we have some contractors, right? And some contractors maybe are not delivering on time. They are not delivering on time to us. We are able to include or incorporate all those inputs in our submission, and we are submitting with delays. Then we have also, we will get delayed also delays in the payments. Contractual risk, right? It depends, right? What kind of contracts we are dealing with, right? And also, as I mentioned here, political environment, right? So it's not the same to sign a contract, for example, US, Europe, right? Or Latin America. So different, it's a different context. So it could change according to the region. the airline risk, right? Maybe the client already said, okay, you have to deliver the design in 3 years, right? But after reviewing the information, documentation, the requirements, technical requirements, so on and so forth, we found out that we are not able to deliver in years, but in 3.5 years or 4. So we need to mention that during the preparation of the offer, and we need to ask the client or submit a client clarification request of the duration of the project. Based on your experience, for example, this project will last 5 years, the client said only 3 years, we need to discuss. And needs to be clarified before you sign the contract. Resource risk, right? So maybe it's very difficult to hire some specific specialists for certain topics, and maybe the client, as the example I showed before, is asking for experts who already have experience in local projects, like national market, and it's very difficult to find expertise in this on this topic. That could be considered as a resource risk, or also we should hire the resources on time, right? The commitment was being defined by the client, and the time frame for hiring the resources is too short. Good. As I mentioned here, we need to try to address also risks as early as possible, and we need to also implement lesson learned. Lesson learned is also very important. Lesson learned for different projects, so technical managers and BIM managers need to also get in touch with the project managers. Project managers have already experience of this kind of project, and they can provide also variable input that can be included in the offer before submission of the final submission to the client, right?
One question.
Yeah.
So economic risk, minimum over budget wouldn't be considered.
Over budget. Over budget. You mean, for example, when we are assessing, right, or defining a final price, right, maybe you are submitting a price that is too high. This is more or less a question, or
no, once you already have the budget,
okay,
so there could be a risk of over budget.
Okay, maybe you spend more of you have. Okay, of course, that's a risk. Yeah.
Yes.
That could be an economic risk. Yes, for example, right? I can give you an example also. Maybe you included in your offer in the list of experts you submit to a client, or you include. You will how you make the assessment. You need to define the labor rate price. Labor rate price per of this specific. You have to include a calculation, right? And this information is defined with the preparation of the offer. You need to look at the market. You need to make interviews with different potential expertise, and you will get inputs. Based on those inputs, you will prepare the labor rate, and then this labor rate will help you to assess the price for this expert during the time of the project duration. For a year, 3 years, you will have a cost factor allocated to this specific expert. Okay, then you win the project, you are the project implementation, and you need to hire those experts, right? But then maybe the availability of experts is limited, or maybe now that the expert is asking for more, right? They want to do more, then there is a risk. So you also have to consider this in your calculations. You cannot precise number. You need to add some risk. You need to allocate some risk to this class. That's why this is very valuable.
Right?
Yeah, it depends mostly from the discussion also with the commercial manager, because you will say, okay, let's put 10%. Commercial manager said, no, it's too much. Okay, let's put 5%. So it's a discussion between different parties, right? In order to find out what is the something in the middle, right? to be competitive. Because price competitivity is also key, because the commercial manager know already more or less what will be the value price, and that's also important. Thank you for the question. If you have another question, please feel free to interrupt me. Sorry, I'm going too fast sometimes, but please feel free to interrupt me on the question. Good. Okay, how you can handle risk? There are different approaches how you can handle a risk, right? Risk avoidance, right? Yeah, you can. Yeah, I mean, this is what is here. This is. I mean, could happen, right? Easily, you don't submit your offer, you are with a risk, but you can find out maybe another technical solution that you can provide to the client in order to avoid certain risks, right? From a technical perspective, also you can provide some solutions, right, in order to avoid the risk. You can also you can transfer the risk to someone else. Maybe, okay, we have expertise, we have also some expertise in road design, in-house, but maybe we prefer not to take that risk, and we say, okay, we have a partner, we have expertise, but maybe our partner has no experience in roads. They also have local experts, they are local partner, for example, and we say, okay, due to the roads, I will take over on the railway part. I am expert in railway, I don't want to deal with it. We are transferring the risk to the partner. And the partner at the end is the one who will respond in case of some issues. At the end, theoretically, okay, at the end, as a whole, everybody will be affected if we are not delivering, right? But from the theoretically, we can transfer also the risk to the partner. Risk mitigation, right? You can reduce the probability of occurrence of certain risks, right? Maybe we already have some resources, right? Or we are hiring some resources. We have already one project maybe there, and we have some expertise there, and the project is about to be delivered in 1 year, for example, in 6 months, and then instead of looking for another expert, maybe we will use the same resources, right? We can use the resources of the project which is already in place in that region. So that's a way how you can minimize the risk percent. So risk limitation, again, is more related to how you reduce the risk, right? How you can limit the risk. So you can be clear, for example, in your offer, you can say, you can mention what you understand of the technical requirements. So that sometimes the claim is not 100% clear, and you might make some assumptions. And those assumptions should be mentioned in your offer, because the offer is also part of the contractual document. So it's not only a technical document which is going to be there as an attachment. All the contractual documents, technical offer, are also part of the contractual documents. They have different categories in terms of priorities, right? But all they are also contractual documents. And if a client accepts or offer, the client also should be also aware of the assumptions that we made. So, yeah, shifting risk, something that we mentioned already, right? We can transfer the risk to the subcontractors, for example, right? And also risk acceptance, right? We accept the risk, we will take this risk, but we will put some mitigation measures, right, in terms of time, in terms of cost, in order to be able to deliver the project, even considering this risk. So basically, the main objective as a whole is to mitigate the risk, right, or prevent it. Prevent or mitigate. That's the main point here. So you also might be aware of this table, I think, right, in which we are including the likelihood, right, of a specific risk, or the damage that can be generated. Okay, this is a table that we usually use, right, when we are assessing the risk. So you can see here, for example, the description of the risk. You will see the impact of this risk. You have to estimate, right, the probability of occurrences, right. You have to also define measures in order to mitigate the risk, right. How much will be the implementation of the measure, right? This measure could also could involve some cost there, cost factors, and how you can mitigate the risk here. Okay, we already mentioned this example in terms of risk category, technical, schedule, financial risk resources. Here we have some examples, right, how we're dealing with the different risks, right? Then I will move maybe to the next point. That we are not talking about risk, we are also talking about chances. Chances also should be identified, and that's also important requirement for the top managers, right? They want us not only prepare a very extensive list of risks, but also the chances, right? For example, one chance is mentioned here, right? That we can claim, right, some extensions of the budget, right, due to delay for the main contractor in executing the contract, right? Maybe the main contractor is executing the contract, but they have some delays. Then we are in the position that we claim some delays for client against some additional budget. And also another chance is that we are using, for example, in our project, local resources or local partner. That means we will have some savings, right, in terms of selling rates, right, or labor rates, right, at the end of the project. So that also would be beneficial for us. Okay, good. I would suggest to make maybe 5 minutes break. It's okay, and then we can continue, because what we would like to show here is something more project related, right? And we need to give you a very short overview of the project we are working right now, right? But I would suggest to have 5 minutes break. Okay. I would like to introduce you to one of the projects we are working on, one of the most important ones. Give you a short review about the project, and also we focus on the procurement technical management, right? And to give you also some insights how we are dealing with the subcontractors. What are the different points need to be considered, right? The different factors need to be considered before onboarding a subcontractor to the project, right? So I will try to give you those inputs here. First of all, so we are talking about Kaunas to Polish border, or Kaunas Urbano to Polish border project, right? This project is about the design and design supervision. And the project, I would say, is the Red Baltic.
Kaunas is the city.
Kaunas, exactly. Lithuania, exactly. Kaunas is one of the city in Lithuania, right? And it's connected to the Polish border, right? Which is part of the global project, which is called Red Baltica. So I will give you some more insights here. We have couple of slides here as well. I wanted to also mention that DVNC have long cooperation with the client. not only in this project, but in other projects within the region, right? We were involved, for example, in doing the infrastructure development plan, or we call them special plan, right, for the section Polish border to Odessa. And also, we were also involved in the special plan from the section from Kaunas Urbano to Vilnius Urbano. This is also part of the global project Baltica. We also participate as a shadow operator in other projects from the region. So here you can see the Rail Baltica global project, and this project try to improve connectivity, right, from the region in order to connect the existing railway infrastructure with the European standards. So we are talking about 1435 millimeters, right? Here, and it's gonna, in total, it's gonna be around 870 kilometers of double track, high-speed train, right? And connecting different countries, right? We can see here Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Poland. So the main objective, right, of the method is to improve, right, not only passenger transport, but also freight mobility or freight transport. So here you can see, you can see here Kaunas, right, and Lithuania, which is here, right, and the project is, we are talking about this, we are Kaunas to Polish border will be more or less here. Okay? It looks like not that big, but actually it's very complex. There are other projects, for example, Kaunas to Vilnius, right? Another project which is Kaunas Urbano, another project which is Panevėžys, which is here, the Latvian border. So those are all the projects which are already, let's say, ongoing. Okay, Kaunas Polish border is a design and design supervision service, right? And who is the client for this project? We are working with Rail Baltica Rail and also with LTGI. Both are national entities, right, in Lithuania, and or they are our main clients. Who is financing this project? Connection European Facility is the one who is providing financial support for the fundings for this project being executed. What is scope of work here? We are talking about ground investigation. We are talking about ground investigations, geological investigations, offsite investigations. There are also called like that, which involve also, for example, cultural investigations, right? We have design proposals, which is a concept developed by the client. It's a more regional concept here, right? It's like we can call it similar to a preliminary design. And we work with BIM standards, right? Which is more related to during the design phase, we have to develop, we have work, prepare drawings, right? 2D layouts, right? Or at a certain point in time, in order to improve the design, in order to make it more effective, we develop BIM models, right? It's like a 3D representation of the structure, right? And we call them BIM. So BIM 300 means the level of details that you have to include in your design or in your model, right? This is a very extensive concept. I don't know how into details, but it's more or less to give you just an idea, right? Because you will have about BIM in many design projects. So design proposals, as I said, is similar to a preliminary design in which you have to be able, for example, to provide the design to a certain level, and also you need to be able to go to one stage which is called like a public hearings. So you prepare the design, you go to the public entities, right? And they will be able to provide you feedback on your design. For example, landfill owners, right? You will design a railway, you will design a road, and then we have some impacts on the landfill owners, and they will provide you feedback. Maybe they will say, okay, that's road. I need to have also a connection to my properties, right? Please include this on in the design. So that kind of things that could happen also. And or they will say, okay, I need to, they will give some inputs also how to improve the design maybe for the front view mostly, right? And maybe you need to do some cultural heritage in certain areas, and you will impact in some of the others there. So they will be able to provide the feedback. And also municipalities also are involved in this public hearing process. And apart from that, the design proposal might enable you to get the building permits, right? That is more or less the objective of this design proposal stage. You move to the master design, which is further detailed design, right, of this process, and you go to the detailed design. Authority engineering, which is more the contact you have to get with different parties, you have to handle different stakeholders, right, in order to make this project real. You have to get approval for different parties as well. So, in this case, the project was split into design part, 2 years, design proposal and master design together in 2 years, and the detailed design in 3 years. This project is a 78 kilometers railway line, including regional lines, which means existing lines which are connecting with different other cities, and you have to consider them when you are designing. In this this map you can see here, right, in blue, are the plant design main line here, and the one in yellow here are the existing lines. So you have to connect. You can see here the plant main line together with the existing line. Utilities, we are talking about low voltage network, high voltage network, right? They call like a ESO or liquid, so more regional names, right? Telecommunications as well need to be considered within the utilities. The client estimates gas network as well, so estimate 38 kilometers of utilities. Local roads, 28 kilometers. Local roads basically means national roads, which will kind of have some crossings, right, with the main line, or will intersect the main line, right, with, in certain points. But for this one, you need to have also a local subcontractors to be able to deliver it. So 28 kilometers were considered by the client. Access roads, so we have also to connect, we have a connection with the local roads need to be connected to the maintenance roads. Maintenance roads means mostly that we get access to the maintenance to the railway infrastructure. You need to provide access to that locations, right? And those maintenance roads should be connected to the local roads, and this connection is called the access. Melioration, basically, that means you have to identify the existing systems, for example, drainage system already existing in the region, right? And you have to meliorate means try to handle, right, the existing infrastructure will be impacted by your project, right? And you have to maintain this infrastructure. You have to maintain, you have to manage it. So that would be part of the migration work to be done here. This slide, I want to show you, right, so many stakeholders involved. So that means that's why I think it reflects, right, how, or could show you, right, give you an idea how complex the project is, right? We're starting from the stakeholders, number 1, 2, and 3. We are in the middle, right? We are talking about main clients. We're talking about LTI. We are talking about Rail Baltica Railway, and also TB&C, right, as a part of the stakeholders as well. Then we have, for example, infrastructure managers, right, on the one side, and we have municipalities on the other side. So infrastructure manager, they play also a very important role because during the design process, for example, we are talking about LIGRID. LIGRID means high voltage network. So for a high voltage network, you have to fulfill client requirements, right? They call design guidelines. You have to fulfill a client requirement. You have to fulfill local regulations. But apart from that, you also have to get in touch with the infrastructure managers. Infrastructure managers, for example, in this case, is LIGRID. You have to prepare a draft of your design, and you have to submit your design package to LIGRID. And LIGRID will give you a feedback. Will tell you, okay, this is fine. No, you need to modify certain points. You need to define redesign, or you need to change your solution a bit. You need to amend it. So they will provide you feedback, right? And then after getting the feedback from the infrastructure manager, you are able to submit your design solution to the client, which is LTEI or Rail Baltica. And the same happens with the other infrastructure manager. For example, we have ESO, which is for low voltage, right? We have BLTOGA. BLTOGA is the infrastructure manager for roads, right? Road authority there. And they also are in charge of providing technical conditions. So at the design proposal stage, we said kind of a very early stage, design proposal, in which you are preparing the preliminary design, right? You need to also get technical conditions from the different parties. The other, for example, you need to submit some drawings, right, of your solution, and the other will need to some additional requirements, technical requirements need to be fulfilled in order to move forward on your design. So that is an important role of the infrastructure managers. And on the other side, you have municipalities, right? Which and those municipalities will be involved during the public hearings process. Your design should be as a part of your design, you have to be involved in the public hearing process, and you might get feedback from different municipalities, and different municipalities might have different requirements, and you need to negotiate with them, right, in order to deliver your design solutions properly. Another stakeholders institutions here are environmental agency. We have cultural heritage agency as well, right? As a part of in this project, for example, we have conceptual design prepared by the client with other subcontractors. In this case, we were part of the conceptual design. TB&C was also involved in the conceptual design from the Ghana police border, and we did some investigations there. Some investigations were done there as a part of cultural investigation, but they were not completed. So usually in the conceptual design, part of the investigation will be done, and then to be complemented during the preliminary design, right, with additional investigations. Okay. Okay. Apart from that, we have other authorities, right? for example, the European Commission, right, the Ministry of Transport, and so on. So that I hope this gives you a better understanding, an idea of how complex this project will be, right? And the number of stakeholders need to be involved during the design process. So now, the scope of work for this service, right? We need to provide a design service for the high-speed railway line connecting Kaunas to Polish Road. That is the main scope that we have to deliver to the client. And the client, obviously, as a part of this design service, we have to, as a first stage, we have to assess or review existing information. Special plan is the name of the conceptual design, we have to review it, right? We have to also conduct additional investigations, partially we already done, we need to complement it. We have to manage, we have to coordinate the design process, different activities, for example, railway with roads. We have to railway roads, for example, we have to consider, okay, roads is connected, for example, with the structural part and also with the track part, right? Different three entities that need different departments that need to be engaged and they have to work together. For example, if you want to design a bridge, you need to think about who is doing the structure of the bridge, who is doing the road. For example, we want to talk about road overpass, right? You have the bridge here, you have the road here, and you have to connect the bridge with the road, right? You need to think about different factors, who is doing what, right? And you need to think about also what was developed in the conceptual design. And you need to assess and suggest some improvement during this stage, right? You will identify some weaknesses in the previous design, and you need to improve it. That will be that's also part of your task, and you need to coordinate and manage this design process. Of course, you need to get the approvals, right? And also the building permits that would enable you to move forward to the construction phase. In this project, the client identify different construction objects, they call like this, right? In which you are involved, for example, the design of the railway main line, around 96 kilometers. You need to do the line reconstruction, right? You need to reconstruct some existing line, right, which is not working anymore. You need to also consider the structures, bridges, for example, right? Culverts, retaining walls, service roads, right? Noise barrier, right? Local roads, land navigation, and utilities. So it's very complex, different construction objects, and you need to allocate, or you need to assign a design to the specific actors or parties. So that's why, keeping in mind this scope of work, we identify some subcontractors that need to be involved. So in the next slide, I will show you the list of subcontractors that will be involved for this project, right?
One question.
Yeah.
Can you just go back to
Very
the
good.
question? While we are discussing about the timeline of the project, after market review on the scouting, when do we do all these considerations in the project phase? Does the project developer go through all these steps and have the thought in mind and thinking about all these processes, or who will do all these thoughts?
Yeah, that is a good question. That is a very good question. What is listed here as a list of construction objects is part of the technical requirements included in the tender documents. You might remember that when the client said, okay, I need to have a project here, I would like to have a railway line, I would like to connect Kaunas with Polish border, right, with a 1435 double track railway line, right? And to do that, I did conceptual design, and those are the references. And part of those requirements are the list of structures which are here. So we need to involve different experts for preparing the offer, technical offer, and we have to keep into consideration what also is mentioned here in terms of the involvement of different parties. So you see here now that I think that's question also that in a better understanding of that we need to include different experts, right? A structural expert, railway expert, road expert. So all of them need to be included. For example, when you are doing the deployment schedule. Deployment schedule means this is part of the document you have to submit together with the technical offer. In this deployment schedule, you will include, for example, the different experts, the list of experts, and you will say, okay, this expert will be involved for 2 years, 1.5 years, what will be the labor rate, and you will estimate the cost of each of the experts, right? So you need to make this assessment also during the preparation of the offer, and those inputs for doing that need to come from the design department. For example, in the DNC we have Design Center India, right? And they are one of the main players who are providing inputs in terms of design. They are already involved in all the projects, like Banashimisa, and they have experience in this kind of projects, and they are providing inputs to us for preparing this deployment schedule document, right? Which will be the basis for doing the bid costing. So we have to make this brainstorming process, as you mentioned, right? Involving different experts, but also not only getting input from our internal department, which is DCI India, but also we will get input from subcontractors. During the bid preparation process, we are also getting offers from different subcontractors, right? And they are also feeding for deployment schedule. So we are getting input from the site in order to prepare a deployment schedule and include all the requirements considered in the tender document. So all the construction modules here should be included in our offers. I hope that answered your question. Okay. As I said, keeping in mind these requirements, we move to the next slide, in which you will see all the subcontractors that need to be involved in this project, right? On the left-hand side, we have the ground investigation subcontractors, right? We need subcontractors involved in the topographical investigations. We have to have geological expert. We have to have geotechnical experts, who are the one basically that will take the inputs from the geological and make the assessment in order to improve the design for the foundations, for example. So we might get some geotechnical engineer report from the site. We have to involve also hydrology and hydrometeorological expert. We need to have, which this hydrometeorological expert will be, is very, in this case, is very important because there will be some inputs to the design, to the drainage part, for example. Cultural heritage, I already mentioned that. Environmental studies were already done during the design concept, but need to be complemented during the preliminary design. And this environmental part is very important because they are working together with different disciplines. So they will get inputs from different disciplines in order to prepare a final report when we are applying for getting the building permits. So we apply for building permits, we have to submit an environmental report, and this environmental report needs to get input from different disciplines. Noise and vibration modeling. We are talking about, for example, noise modeling. They will provide input for noise barriers, for example, that will be included during the design. On the right-hand side, we have construction objects. Also, different subcontractors. I mentioned already the local road, subcontractor, access roads, drainage flow path, which means the one who will do the storm water design. So they will involve also in the drainage part of the railway, and they have to work together also with the drainage design for the road part. Land direction already mentioned as well, power lines and gas network or utilities, foundations and environments. So finally, now we have more or less some idea of the project, we have more or less of the requirements in terms of technical part. Now, we would like to onboard one subcontractor. Okay. This is an example of the local road subcontractor, right? And I try to put here different steps we have followed in order to onboard one subcontractor, right? So, step number one, we need to define the scope of work. We need to define the scope of work and deliverables. The scope of work needs to be aligned with the technical requirements for the client. We need to review the technical documents plus additional documentation provided by the client. For example, the conceptual design, they will share with us conceptual design. They will do the environment, they will share with us environmental impact assessment as well. And keeping in mind that information, we need to define the scope of work. We might get in touch with different subcontractors or potential subcontractors, right, that might be involved in this project, and we need to collect also from the site in order to prepare a final document, which is called, as I said, a scope of work, in which you will define technical specifications, you will define the deliverables that they need to provide during the project, and you need to provide some, they need to highlight also which internal standards they have to follow. For example, you need to tell them, okay, you will design the roads, but you need to align with the BIM requirements or the BIM execution plan. They need to those guidelines, and you need to include those requirements within this scope at the beginning. Stage number two, which is going to be in parallel of stage number one, I would say, somehow. You need to define the scope of work. You need to say who is doing what. Who is doing what? Okay, road designer, railway designer. They might need people from my side. I need people from the railway designer. We need people from the road designer. And road designer, we might need people from the railway designer as well. Right? I mentioned the example, right? We have a bridge. We have to design the road class, and we need to connect the roads with the structure. We are responsible in this case for the structure, and the road design is responsible for the bridge, right? They need to provide to us, for example, the road alignment. They need to provide us, for example, some cross sections, and then we will be able to design the bridge and align with the design of the road. So that's an example. For example, or another example would be, we will have some road culverts there, right? Could be road culverts, could be railway culverts, so we need to define who is in charge of designing it, right? That's another example of a scope of work split, in which you will say, as I said, who is doing what. It needs to be clarified in order to avoid misunderstanding or issues during the project execution. Subcontractor schedule, right? This subcontractor schedule need to be aligned also with our overall railway schedule. That means our overall railway schedule will be updated. It's not a fixed one. So you, at the very beginning, when you submit your offer, you will have a schedule we submitted to a client, and then this schedule might be updated also during the execution of the service. You might have some scheduling meeting with the client, in which, based on the new or additional requirement for the client, or additional information or better understanding of the project, you might need to update the schedule. You railway overall or schedule, and the subcontractor schedule need to align with it. At least, or I would say minimum, in terms of the deliverables. For example, we have to submit, we said, design proposals, master design. we have to submit design proposal. We have to, they have to align the submission with our submission. If we are submitting certain form time, they have to provide us inputs before, in order to be able to integrate the inputs and provide our final submission. Payment milestones means that as soon as you define the scope of work, you define the scope of work split, you define the schedule of subcontractor, you need to discuss with the subcontractor in order to define the payment milestones. Payment milestones should be attached to certain approvals or to certain processes. Right? For example, we submit our design proposal or we submit our master design, and then this submission needs to be approved by the jury. Right? Then we said, okay, your first payment milestone will be when the design proposal is approved by the client. For example, that's first payment milestone. Or we will have a public hearing, right, process. So the next payment milestone will be attached to the approval of the public hearing process. So you need to attach your payment milestones to certain approvals, right, or certain process. Then you will ensure that the subcontractor will engage during the process till you get the approval. So that is how one way how you can manage to attach the payment milestone to the approval, and the payment milestone basically will be the split, right, of the payment of the subcontractor, right, according to the approval process or the design process. Finally, we have this final agreement on terms and conditions, right, and contract signing. Basically, this document is the one in which you will discuss different conditions that need to be agreed from both parties, right? This process mostly is done in parallel, right? You will have during the procurement process, you will have a technical procurement lead, and you will have a procurement manager. Procurement manager will be more focused on the finalizing the contract and technical condition, and technical procurement will be focused on the technical part, and they will be working parallel, right, in order to onboard the subcontractor also time. And this is more administrative topic, but then conditions also is very important, right? And they involve also commercial department, and they will involve also the legal department as well. And the final document, which has to be prepared by the procurement manager, needs to include all the inputs which are listed here, right? The scope of work split, subcontractor schedule, and also a payment milestone. So after compiling and prepare all the documents, then you are ready to sign a contract and we start this approval process from both parties, right? From the DDNC internally and also for the subcontractor, right? And and that's it. And then you will be onboarding your subcontractor, and then there are other steps, right? We are not discussing that now, but this is mostly what you need to onboard. The process we are following in order to onboard all subcontractors as a part of procurement process. And I think that was the last slide. Now you have questions. Okay. Yeah.
So regarding the risks that you take into account when proposing, what about the risks that we are not anticipating? So the risks that might be coming from the other side. Because, for instance, I work for a public authority in Portugal, and we do a lot of tender processes. And I'm pretty sure that most of the people that are applying are not completely fully aware of the risks that are on our side. So how would you say are the best challenges or the best ideas to tackle these challenges?
Yes, of course. Risk workshop is an exercise that we are doing, right? Keeping in mind mostly for internal resources, right? Experts from different departments from the company. But we are not maybe 100% aware of the local risks, right? We are not familiar with it. So that's why it's also important to have these discussions with the subcontractors or the local partners. That is also important to have them, to engage them also in this exercise, because they are the ones who have this knowledge that we are not aware of. So that is important, and that exercise will be done during the offer preparation, right, or the bidding phase, right, in which obviously the subcontractor or the will be keen on providing you or supporting you, because they also would like to work with you. So they would like to work like to win this project. They would like to be engaged in this process. That's why it's the moment in which you have to take this chance to try to get as much input from the side, especially keeping in mind that local knowledge and the local risks that we are not aware of, right? And there could be many examples, right, of kind of situations, right? They could give you even this part of the due diligence, right? I think that they can give you, if they are maybe very close to the client, right? They maybe they are also familiar with the project. Maybe they even develop the conceptual design, so they can also give you valuable information that can be included as a part of the risk assessment. So I would say that would be one of the approaches in order to deal with this issue, with this one. Yeah.
While building a project or developing a project, do you also have an exit strategy if the project doesn't go well? What would you do?
Yes, of course. Yes, that's also a very, very important question. We have that, and that is part of the negotiation with the client in terms of terms and conditions, right? It will happen that we have a delay, certain delay, and the delay is like we have certain limits, right? Like more than certain time, that which is not acceptable from our side, right? And also that would happen with a subcontractor. So, for example, we have some terms, we have some conditions where we say, okay, if we are not receiving payment from the client, right? For example, maybe the project is not being executing anymore, right? Okay. And the project is not going to happen. We also can, we have also these conditions and need to be also included in these negotiations. Otherwise, we will have to keep paying to the subcontractor, even though we are not getting paid